Well, you may have noticed that we haven't offered any of our tip Mustang training videos recently, and there's a really good reason for that. Today, we're going to explain what's going on, and we're going to help out another horse owner in need. Well, unfortunately and very unexpectedly, we got news about a month ago that the Bureau of Land Management had decided not to renew its contract with the Mustang Heritage Foundation, who was actually in charge of the TIP training program. So unfortunately, that program ceased nationwide, and we can no longer bring in Mustangs, gentle them, and make them available for adoption already gentled. There is a very lucrative business in the U.S. today called kill pen horses. We see them all over Facebook, sometimes on other media platforms. Essentially, the way it works is horses go to auction to be sold. Horses that are sold at a low enough bid may often be picked up by a kill buyer. The kill buyer gathers those horses, takes them to a kill pen. Now, don't let that fool you. In the U.S., there are no more legal horse slaughterhouses. However, the kill pen facilities are essentially holding facilities. You could almost compare them to like a feedlot for cattle. So the horses go to the kill pen facility where the kill pen owner arranges semi-trucks to then haul those horses to Mexico or Canada, where slaughterhouses still do exist for horses. Now, economically, obviously like any business, they're going to look for ways to make as much money as possible. So if the horse kill price is based on the per pound weight, and they can sell that same animal for a higher price to a new owner, well, they're going to do that. It's basic economics. Because the TIP program had ended and my stalls were empty, I was starting to line up horses to come in for training when I got a call from someone who was pretty desperate. Essentially, and before I go on, I want to clarify here. This person is someone I know from the past, a very experienced horse person, and she knew the risk she was getting into. She understood buying a horse sight unseen is very risky. She understood using a hauler that you don't know is very risky. So she did her due diligence. She did her research. She made phone calls. She requested vet checks, and she made sure all health papers, they basically assured her everything was lined up as it should have been. So she went ahead and bailed 2 horses that she really liked that she had seen online. Well, once the horses were loaded onto the truck and trailer and started being hauled across the country, things began to unravel. And that picture-perfect scenario of how the kill pen bail and rescue system is supposed to work is not what happened. So she found out through the hauler's own admission, these horses had very little paperwork. One of them had no health papers at all. One of them was limited only to an older Coggins, and it did not have any type of travel health certificate. So they were being hauled illegally. They had actually been sold illegally according to that state law. These horses should not have been sold without those papers. And she was in a bind because she could no longer get them to the facility she had actually paid for them to be hauled to. And she needed a place where they could come and basically be quarantined a second time. So she called me in desperation, not knowing what to do. Well, thankfully, I didn't have any other horses here for training at the time. I was willing to accept the risk to help her and the horses. However, that meant I had to do something with Grace to protect her. So we immediately set to work. We actually cleared a few trees we were planning to do anyway. We set up a hot wire pen, just kind of a big paddock over, away from our stall and training area, because we wanted to make sure if these horses had anything contagious, Grace would not be affected. So that was step 1. After that, it was a matter of coordinating the delivery with the hauler to bring those horses here. So I'm sitting here waiting on these 2 horses to arrive, and things could get kind of interesting. I'm curious to see how this plays out. And after the buyer had paid the fee for the transport, the hauler started contacting me and wanted me to do a trailer-to-trailer transfer in another location to make it easier on her. Well, the buyer knew nothing about this, so there's another unethical thing going on. She wasn't happy when I declined. You know, my specialty is wild horses. That is not a risk worth taking. Transferring a wild horse from one trailer to another in a truck stop parking lot. I'm not interested. Plus, we've built our facility specifically to handle these large rigs. So there's no issue with her coming in here. So anyway, they passed our house about 30 minutes ago and haven't been responding to text. So I'm not really sure what's going on. They're about 30 minutes overdue at this point. So I'm sending Sean down to actually hopefully meet them if they get turned around. Hopefully it'll be soon. And he's far more diplomatic and good with words than I am. I'm much better at putting my foot in my mouth and saying stupid stuff. So could be an interesting afternoon. We'll see. Well, Sean finally met up with the transporter and they arrived about an hour after their scheduled delivery time. No explanation for where they went, so that one kind of baffled me. But in any case, we got them situated the same way I typically unload wild horses, since we didn't really know what to expect. And they started unloading the 4 horses that were in front of where my client's 2 horses were. The first one that stepped off the trailer wasn't really a big surprise. It was just a big Belgian that was kind of typical of what I've often seen online with kill pens. Little underweight, but nothing major stood out. The second horse they led off the trailer absolutely shocked me. It was this sorrel mare, probably very pretty at one time, but she was a walking skeleton. It's really hard to see here in this clip I took, but I tell you, this horse was literally so weak she was swaying from side to side and had no business being on that trailer. That was quite a shock to see. Eventually, they got to the client's 2 horses who were allowed to just unload themselves right into the pen. And the big draft cross gelding, although he would lead a little bit, you had to catch him first, and that's all he knew how to do. So essentially, I wound up with 2 wild horses in my pen, both of which needed training. After giving them a little time to settle in, my next step was to get that halter off the gelding, switch to my rope halter, and then evaluate the health of both animals. Based on my experience and observation, I concluded that the gelding had a case of conjunctivitis in one eye, basically an infection. He had what appeared to be ringworm, and his hooves were long to the point that his back feet were overstepping and actually injuring the heels of his front feet. The Mustang appeared to have shipping fever, which is essentially a highly contagious viral respiratory infection. The next step was to figure out if they'd had any handling. The Mustang proved that she only knew how to run away when she was afraid. She would either trot off quickly or even bolt very rapidly, away from any pressure that made her uncomfortable. The gelding proved to be a little more familiar with limited handling around his head, but he also proved to be very disrespectful and dangerous with those hind feet. In his case, I spent a lot of time working on yielding his body to teach respect, as well as bending and flexing his neck to help him overcome his tension and fear. And I was even able to trim up those front feet in a somewhat creative way, just to help him stop overstepping so much. These 2 stayed with me for 2 weeks, where I just really worked on reprogramming their brain to enjoy human company. I gentled them and made them more easily handled, and spent some time treating some of their health issues. During their short time here, both progressed beautifully. The mare learned that humans could be a good thing with lots of scratches and treats. She even learned to overcome her fear of my stick and string, and learned how to stand quietly rather than panic and run. Likewise, the gelding learned to tolerate my petting all over his body. After their 2 weeks training was up, it was time for them to load up into my trailer and go to their permanent home. Well, that wraps it up for this video. You know, the kill pen situation is it's always a hotly debated topic among horse adopters and people who do or don't support it, and that wasn't the purpose of this video. Really, the purpose was to educate those of you who might be considering adopting a kill pen horse or paying the so-called bail money. The key is know what you're getting into. Do your research. You know, these people work together, the kill pens, the auctions houses, the transporters, and the quarantine facilities. And frankly, whether or not they're in it for the horse, can be debated sometimes. Some are in it for the money, and you need to know who is who. So make sure you do your diligence, do your research, get on Facebook, type in the person's name, see what comes up, because there's a lot of information out there to help you make the right decision. But in this case, I'm happy to say we got these 2 horses to a great home where they're going to be well loved and get all the care they need from here on out. Thanks for watching. See you next time.